Time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll call this meeting to order of the Penn County Board of Supervisors on July 3rd, 2025. First thing is to approve the agenda. Motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. We have the June 26th, 2025 minutes before us. We thought we had a new recorder of those. Does anybody want to scrutinize them closely?
I'll make a motion to accept those.
I will second this one. I have the writer second on writing.
Yeah, that'd be really tough. I might be biased.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. First thing on our agenda is department head. I was thought to start back in the corner with Nathan.
Very good. I don't have a lot to report. The abstract of assessment was submitted to the Department of Revenue. We should, hopefully we won't get an equalization order, but if we do, we'll find that out in the next couple months. Good news was there's no new cases to PAB or district court out of the board of review. So right now I currently have Kim Grow at PAB and Walmart district court. We did get the appraisal back. I think I might have reported that already for the Walmart. It supported our value, so that one should be, I think we'll probably settle with Walmart. Will probably drop that one. PAB with Kim Grow is scheduled for September. And other than that, I will be attending the summer seminar in Storm Lake, Iowa, July 16th to the 18th.
Yeah, you know, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when the first thing you said was that you already submitted to the Department of Revenue, right,
Yep.
Nathan?
Yep.
So what does that mean when you say that you haven't heard back from them, if there's gonna be an adjustment, or?
So I submit my abstract to the state and then
Is that for the total county?
total value, total assessed value, not taxable value, assessed
Assessed
value.
value for the state?
And then they'll collect that data, and if I'm not between that 95 and 105% on any particular class, that's when I'll get the equalization order. So they would say, so for instance, if I came in at 92 in my commercial, they would give me an 8% equalization order, and I'd have to adjust commercial values up 8% and send out new notices saying, hey, we got equalized by the state.
And you never heard back from anybody on
What's that?
that? If you send them an update and
We have
increase
not,
their taxes?
I've not been through an equalization order, so I don't,
Okay.
I'm praying that we don't. The commercial class, we might get an equalization order just because the board of review reduced values by more than my threshold. So I'm real close, I'm right at that 95.
Okay.
If I get an equalization, it probably won't be very many, it'll be a couple percent, I'm guessing. And then I'll go to Des Moines and fight and say, I'll try to argue that we don't need that, or, you know, I'll get some data and some of my appraisals and some of my current sales that showed that we did increase enough, and hopefully they'll
Okay.
just drop it, but I can't guarantee they will.
But we haven't heard anything back then from Kim Grow on that whole situation with the tanks?
We have not heard back from Kim Grow. Like I said, our PAB hearing is scheduled for September. Since we were already on the docket, we're not paying anything because all the legal stuff is, you know, the discovery is already done. I think we're probably losing the PAB case just because the Chickasaw County lost their case they went to district court. They appealed the PAB decision. They took it to district court and they lost that. And that was a 90,000 gallon horizontal propane tank, and we have 30,000 gallon horizontal propane tanks.
Is that just one, or is that for everything that they have in account?
If we lose that PAB case with Kim Grow, then every tank in the county will be removed for 26.
Okay, that's what I thought, okay.
And that would be significant value, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Katie?
Yeah, so the Board of Health met last on May 14th. We did not meet in June, but we're planning to meet again on July 16th at 12:30 in the Public Health Conference Room. We reviewed our year-end budget, and it shows that we're under expenditures by $66,752, although that is after a budget amendment for our vaccines. If you look at our expenditures prior to the amendment, we're still under our original budget by $5,753. And we exceeded our expected revenue by $101,832, which is quite a feat given that we were only expected to bring in $276,000. The majority of our revenue is due to the fact that we offer and we bill for private pay vaccines through commercial insurance. In the fiscal year 25, our expenditures on private pay vaccines were $158,086, but our revenue was $247,267. We do really well with our private pay vaccines. We have quite a few that we do give. Our other revenue includes our state grants, which brought in approximately $119,000. On Tuesday, the 99 Counties Project meeting was held at the Emergency Management Building. This is an initiative that is through the Iowa Cancer Registry, and it's designed to provide county-specific data to all 99 counties and give insight on which cancers are affecting our communities. And the top 5 that we see in Henry County are breast, prostate, lung, uterine, and colorectal. Due to federal funding for these programs and cuts that has been proposed to federal funding for cancer research and prevention, that entire project is in jeopardy. Also, the Iowa Cancer Consortium, their funding is in jeopardy too, and they have done a lot of work. I know it's been said multiple times in the news that we are the second highest incidence. Iowa has the second highest incidence of cancer in the country. And we also have rising rates. We're one of 2 states with rising rates. So that's a big deal to have funding for cancer research and prevention cut. On June 13th, we were notified by Iowa Health and Human Services that residents of our county had been in contact with a person who had measles in Johnson County. We had 1 infant that was under voluntary quarantine, and we do have to follow those individuals on a daily basis with symptom checks, including monitoring of their temperature. Johnson County assisted with the rest of our individuals because they had, when they began tracking, they were already in Johnson County's system. They have an automated system. And so they completed those monitoring tests for us. So everybody is off of their monitoring and quarantines. I do want to reiterate though that we're on call 24/7, 365 for any measles testing. If there's a test, we get called, we get notified, and we are expected to respond to those immediately. So even if it's somebody who's been exposed to a positive case, we still have to monitor those folks if they've not been vaccinated. We had to deliver the voluntary quarantine orders by hand, so it does take a great deal of time and effort for our department. We don't have a large department. We're certainly not Johnson County, but we appreciate their assistance with that. And then Dr. Henenthet is our state veterinarian, and he gave an update on avian influenza on the 23rd. The state has allocated $6,000 in grant funding to each county to help vaccinate farmers against influenza. So they gave us $20,000 last year for this initiative, but they're expanding this a little bit, and they want farmers who work with cattle, poultry, or even swine to consider getting a flu vaccine. The worry is that if you're infected with the normal strain of vaccine that affects humans and co-infected with H5N1 or the avian influenza, that virus can mutate and then begin to jump to other species or mammals. They've had incidents in cats too. And then this is Morgan. So Morgan is a new nurse that began with us on June 9th. She filled the vacancy that was left by Amy Martin in April. We have a few upcoming events that we'll be at. We'll be at Kids Day at the fair. We're handing out a healthy snack, so that's a fun thing we get to do. We'll also be planning to have a booth at the Access Energy Shareholders Picnic. That's on August 5th. And then our Back to School Health Fair, planning is underway. That's going to be on August 11th. We had a very large turnout last year, so we actually have outgrown the space that was provided by St. Alphonsus, and we'll be in the old House Center this year. So there'll be more details of that to come. I'm going to go into the general assistance report if that's okay. All right. So we had 4 people that contacted us in the last couple of weeks of June when we took over general assistance. We served 1 with direct cremation. There was 1 person who was over income limits and 1 person who was already past due. I have one that was approved yesterday for direct cremation, although that'll be on this fiscal year. So in fiscal year 25, the county provided 9 direct cremations. And then at the end of fiscal year 25, we still had $8,951 left in the general assistance fund. So our income limits are so stringent that a single person to qualify for general assistance has to make less than $652 per month. And that's including like any food assistance benefits, any social security, anything like that. If you took just that $652 and a person was working full-time at 36 hours a week, that would equate to an average salary of $4.53 an hour, which is actually below the state and federal minimum wage. So it's essentially very difficult for anyone to qualify for general assistance. If we don't raise that, right now our county is at 50% of the federal poverty guideline, is what we follow. But if we don't raise that, one consideration might be to increase the amount that we give the fellowship cup. Currently we give them $500 a month, which is expected to cover the whole county. So that's all I have.
I have a couple of questions to
Mhm.
follow up. Southeast Iowa, you said Iowa is second in the nation on cancer. Is Southeast Iowa like number 1 in the state?
No.
Did you know that?
So they said in the meeting on Tuesday that Palo Alto County is the highest rate. As far as Henry County, we're kind of, how they explained it is we're average, which is not good because you're still, you're
Right.
average at being higher than the rest of the nation in incidence of cancer.
Okay. The reason
So-
I ask because there's lots of information floating around that says Southeast Iowa is number 1 in the state, unfortunately.
We're
which is
not
a bad
number
place to be.
one.
That's good to
Henry
know.
County is doing okay as far as incidents. We're average for being high, but Lee and Des Moines County are extremely high. Those are our neighbors. So we do have to, I mean, cancer doesn't respect county boundaries, so we do have to look at what's
there's a
going on in
cause of it.
surrounding counties and
Yeah.
states.
Okay. The other question I had in reference to what's happening throughout this time of year, do we have any kind of programs on wood ticks? Or any information out there to help people better understand how to prevent and
We can put some
stay away?
information out.
'Cause obviously Lyme disease is a big deal.
And we get weekly reports from the state of Iowa on vector-borne disease, so bug-borne disease like ticks, that is published. The other interesting one that we follow too is, it's a condition called alpha-gal that happens after people are infected or bitten by ticks. They can develop, it's almost like an autoimmune disorder. It causes a lot of really scary health issues, so.
So I'm sure most people in this room have been outside, Caleb, have probably had a tick or two, right? So that's why I was curious and see if there's something we can do to help promote some awareness. And
We can do that.
That would be great. And then lastly, anything on environmental?
I don't have anything new on environmental health from Russ. They come once a year to meet with us, so, or once a month when they come to our board meetings, but we haven't had any new complaints.
Okay, other than what we know that's happening south of town with
Correct.
CIS
Correct,
situation.
and the DNR is involved in that one too.
Right.
So we really just took the complaint and passed it along to the appropriate people to deal with it, which was Russ and the DNR. So.
Okay, all right, thank you.
First of all, Morgan, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And then, Katie, on the influenza vaccination, or aviation
Mhm.
flu type thing, I don't know if any of those auxiliary, like, committee, and do they meet during the summer that you could talk to them?
I'm not sure
or
if they meet
How are we
during
gonna
the
get that
summer.
information
So
out? I mean,
we
other
were-
than, we got Allison here, so.
Right, we were
And then-
actually-
And then the Mount Pleasant News here too.
We were actually
Great.
planning to
And we've got Melanie
put
right there.
information out
Yeah.
when we were at the fair too. So, we pushed messaging out last year. We even worked with the Turkey Federation to see who the poultry farms were. We sent letters to everybody and there was not a great response. And, during the state meeting, this was kind of, the sentiment is, they're not getting vaccinated. The state, if there is an outbreak in counties, are offering free Tamiflu. But again, nobody was wanting to be a taker on that either.
Farmers are just a bunch of old fuddy-duddies.
I know, but if you get sick, then how do you work, you know? And
on yourself?
I think people forget too the economic impact that has. You know, if you have a flock that is infected, you have to cull the entire flock. There were hundreds of thousands of birds in northwest Iowa that were destroyed last year. So that's huge. And I thought it was really interesting too that what the state considers a backyard flock is anything less than 75,000 birds. So that was wild.
And there's a lot of backyard flowers.
There's a lot of backyard flocks. There's a lot of hobbyists. So they are offering the influenza vaccine this season. It's not in yet. Usually it's towards the end of September that shipment will come in. But if you know any farmers.
So Ron, run over there and get your flu vaccination.
I'll get back to you on that
Okay,
one.
nice talking to you.
I don't like needles.
Okay, then.
I will come up here, excuse me. I'll come front and center. I'm gonna give you my monthly update while I'm at it. Thank you. Yep. So I'm not gonna go word for word. Robin, I didn't forget you. So last night we had a board meeting. Main topic of discussion was obviously, camping. We're right in the heart of camping season. Expect a very, very busy weekend. I'm pushing 40 hours already this week, and I'm on call, and I will be coming in patrolling over the weekend. So, unfortunately, yeah, it's gonna be, seems like 4th of July weekend, we tend to have some issues. It's great, to celebrate independence of the U.S., but also a lot of fireworks. I want to make a note, and I made a note this morning on KILJ, giving my monthly update that no fireworks are allowed within the county parks. It seems that we've had a lot of issues with that in the past. The board, we do have that in our rules and regs now, that no fireworks of any kind are allowed within our county parks. It's a safety concern. You have a lot of animals, folks that don't appreciate that. So we want to accommodate to everybody. So last year, unfortunately, we had some issues that kind of drew the line in the sand. I got called in at 1 o'clock in the morning, which I did not appreciate that. So we had, it typically happens, one person ruins it for everybody. So that is the decision that the board has made moving forward. Let's see, the dump station, I'm hoping we can get that opened up fully for the weekend. Unfortunately, progress has been very, very slow. With me being the general contractor, I've been the main contact with all of the subcontractors. We've had some issues, some holdups, unfortunately, throughout the whole process. After I give my presentation here, I'm actually meeting with the last and final subcontractor to put the keypad for the gate system, and they're going to give me an orientation on how that all works. I was hoping I would have a couple weeks to work out any kinks, but it looks like I'm going to have a day to work out any of the kinks. So hopefully we will have it open. Either I'll have to come in, for a couple hours and allow people to dump, or coordinate that with our campground host to allow any registered campers for the weekend to utilize that facility. Excuse me. We hosted, I was instrumental in hosting a chronic wasting disease program. If you're not familiar with the chronic wasting disease, it is a disease that's going through deer herds here in Iowa. It is not EHD, which is usually found during drought periods. That's more of a midge. This is a totally different disease. Unfortunately, we have our first case here in southeast Iowa last year, north of Burlington. So it is in our neck of the woods. So I worked with Iowa DNR and Iowa State Extension to host a 2-part class, one for conservation professionals, just to create awareness to the general public. Obviously, southeast Iowa is known for its whitetail hunting. So they also offered a public course, if you will, for anyone interested in learning more. So moving forward, myself and Des Moines County Conservation, Van Buren County Conservation staff are informed. So the best way to test the deer, if they're, not acting like they should, looks like they've lost a ton of weight, they're walking in circles, for example, skin and bones, most likely that animal's gonna have to be put down. And then you can take the lymph nodes out and send that off to a lab, and they can test whether or not it is positive for CWD. It could be very detrimental to our deer herd here because it's transmitted by saliva, urine, so yeah, it could pass on to the deer herd, and which for some people that's probably a good thing. They don't like deer, but for hunters like myself, I'm all about managing the population, but unfortunately, yeah, Mother Nature says otherwise. Been working with Rachel and Dean, your daughter actually, discussing some different ways to generate revenue for the conservation department. One is that has been I've been approached about is charging a destination fee for our cabins as well as campers. If you go to like a resort, you might see on your invoice a destination fee. Those proceeds typically go back to a fund to make park improvements. So I've been kind of chewing that idea around. I have kind of mixed reviews, but obviously, that's something that we can talk to the conservation board about.
Excuse me, Caleb, what is the fee for cabins now?
So for George and Imogene, there are bigger cabins. They're $125 a night. For Sugar Maple and White Oak, they're half the size of the others. They're $75 a night. Park incidents. I'm going to start putting this on my monthly report. Dalton and I, a lot of people aren't aware, Dalton and I are on call 365 days a year, 24/7. Dalton and I, luckily, we have a good working relationship, so usually we rotate every other week. But say dispatch calls us for some sort of issue, I don't answer my phone, they immediately call Dalton. So we try to have, we have lives outside of work. But here within the last month, as you can see, we've had a ton of calls. Some really, not pertinent to our facilities and or parks. Unfortunately, we've had 2 missing persons within the last month. And we are really seeing influx of trash. The amount of time Dalton and I spend picking up trash is unacceptable. And a lot of times we try to have a conversation with people. I've caught people in the act throwing trash. Fishermen, for example, throwing trash into our waterways. And just a lot of it is, having a simple conversation with them about it. But we're not there 24/7 to monitor our parks, but we're seeing have an influx of dumping, household trash, and I hate to do it, but I will do it. A lot of times, I'll pull the truck up and load up all the trash, and I'll sift through it, and usually I find a name and contact info. So, really, I don't, it's disappointing to see. We've seen, people dumping leaves, sticks. I mean, it is a natural area, don't get me wrong, but there's places for folks to utilize. So it's something, it's kind of been an ongoing thing.
So to that point, Caleb, excuse me,
Yep.
so what are the repercussions? You find somebody's name.
Yep, I usually pay them a visit or call them if I can get enough information, or depending on, the situation, if, it could be drug paraphernalia. Obviously then at that point, we'll turn it over to the sheriff's department. Luckily, we haven't really found any of that in the 4.5 years that I've been the director, but.
But littering is against the law, so.
It is, but yeah, I guess my point is I'm not afraid to sift through the trash, put some gloves on and go through it.
Well, I appreciate
Most
that, but if
of
we're
the
gonna go to
time-
that effort, we should be.
Exactly,
If it's consistent
yeah.
that happens, then we should
Yep.
be taking it to the next level.
So, and usually, Dalton and I are really good about taking pictures. I know the sheriff's department is occupied with plenty of other things. But a lot of times it's just, talking to that person, and most of the time it gets through and it hasn't happened again. But So just something, you know, I want, you know, the public to be aware of, that we are keeping an eye on it. We do have security cameras. If there is an issue, you know, for example, down the dam, I can pull security footage up, and most of the time we can prosecute, and we have, since I've been here. So really, other than that, I also included, our naturalist report. Addie Pasha is our new naturalist park tech. She's gotten thrown right into the mix with summer camps, and yeah, she's been a great fit thus far and has been doing a great job. Yeah, but really, other than that, just business as usual. Very busy time of the year for us. So I guess one thing I will note, you know, if you're trying to contact us, be patient, because Gloria, my office manager, is only there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And leave a message. We'll try to get back with you as soon as we can, but we're very busy this time of year. So.
You have 350 interactions, that's really good.
Yep, and that's actually, we're down. Those interactions, I've seen them clear up to 2,000, 1,500 to 2,000 a month. Obviously right now, you know, with school being let out, it's more summer camps. But about a month ago, into May roughly, we had, you know, multiple schools out there, hundreds of kids a day coming out. So that's fairly low for the year, but
Who determines the programs that are offered?
we try here, since I've been here, we're really trying to get community, you know, input, more or less. You know, some of our programs are kind of the same year in, year out. But after a while, you know, we see our attendees starting to decline. So trying to keep things fresh, you know, new topics that are pertinent, you know, to nowadays. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So we're actually hosting next Tuesday, July 8th from 4 to 6, a pond maintenance program. We get a lot of calls from, you know, people. There's a ton of farm ponds in southeast Iowa. So, you know, some people don't care if there's algae and moss. Other people do, you know, if they use it for swimming purposes or, you know, recreation purposes in general. But Chad Dolan, he's a DNR fisheries biologist here in southeast Iowa. He is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to, you know, treating invasives in our farm ponds. So like I said, you know, that one is kind of out of the ordinary, but since we've had, you know, a lot of calls about pond maintenance and, you know, algae or, you know, unusual plants growing, in farm ponds, we, you know, took that into consideration. But the public, you know, we want to know what you're interested in. Obviously, you know, we try to cater to our youth. You know, trying to, you know, get people in the outdoors, you know, way into water conservation, soil health, to, you know, talking about furs and, you know, animals, plants, you name it. So
I know, personally, I'm enrolled in your pond class coming up, but second week, Lake Lacey's having a geology discussion and a wild edibles discussion. So there'd be some people that
we hosted not quite a week ago. We did like a wild game feed, kind of an odd time of the year to have it. We had, you know, a decent turnout. I would say 15 max. A lot of times you'll see those more in your winter months. But, you know, with the holidays and whatnot, it's kind of hard, and you're competing with a lot of other, you know, churches and organizations hosting it. So we had a decent turnout, but we're just trying to, you know, work or try to, you know, reach different types of people. Not everybody's, you know, into fishing, or, you know, hiking, but just, trying to get everybody involved. So.
If you have the opportunity to work with the extension office, maybe to do like a mini master's program or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you're doing with the pond.
So I would
the basics.
So I've worked with extension quite a bit, even prior to becoming the director. The Master Conservation Program, it was a program in the past.
I took that last year.
So I was instrumental in getting that back up and going.
It's a great program, too.
Yeah, so we had, I think, at least 4 programs now. Yeah, anybody, the thing about the Master Conservation Program is it kind of breaks down different things. You do have the forestry, your prairie, water quality, watersheds, putting it all together. So it's a wealth of knowledge.
And that's,
They-
but that's handled at the state level, basically. Is there anything that we can do to bring that down to the
Yep,
local level?
yep. So we've done some more hands-on, just like the pond thing. We've done a forestry walk, talking about tree ID, tree maintenance, timber stand improvement, some different things like that. Water quality, a lot of that, really stems with the USDA and RCS office. But yeah, we have, trying to do some of the different programs, cause land management is, one thing that we do. Dalton and I manage a lot of, county property, but then also just creating awareness, cause there's a lot of cost share opportunities to do, land management on your personal property, but a lot of people aren't aware of that. So that's some of the things that we've thought about doing more of in the future.
Okay.
So,
Good.
but,
Anything else from you? Because I have a question for you. It's relative to the
no,
board here.
Yep.
So last night, obviously at the conservation committee, it had a local neighbor.
Yep.
Wanted to come in and talk about fence.
Yep.
You know what they say about fences? Good fences make good neighbors. There's a lot of state law that ties back into fencing. And Eldon McAfee is the state national expert on fencing. And I think as a county and as a conservation department, we have an obligation to our neighbors to be good neighbors. And a lot of that ties back into fencing. And so Caleb had a conversation with the board last
Yep.
night with a neighbor that has some ongoing concerns and have been concerns for probably 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
So,
So it seems like it's been, and I've mentioned it over the last couple of years, but it really seems like here in the last 4 years that we've had a fair number of landowners that border our county parks expressed frustration in the past of, maintenance of that fence line. I agree 100%, we need to be neighborly. I've got livestock of my own. But, in this case, Whitney is gonna have livestock. So, I've had some pretty in-depth conversations with him. Unfortunately, I don't agree 100% in what he wants to do, because.
And that's okay, you don't have to.
Yeah, and, yeah, but I just wanna make it clear that, it was gonna cost the county almost 30,000 to remove trees and grub the fence line. And I guess, I expressed my concern last night, and I've had that conversation with Whitney, by doing that on the hillside, we're talking CD slopes, very steep. Trying to get, grass to grow into white timber soil, it's gonna be a money pit. So, I was hired on behalf of the conservation board, I'm a county taxpayer. I can't see us spending 30,000 to grub a fence line. So, I'm all about working with them, alternative is, minimal grubbing, cutting the trees, leaving the root balls to keep that soil in place. And replacing that fence. The fence that's there is not good. It won't turn cows for nothing, even if they have a ton to eat. So I think, after last night's discussion, we can, come to terms, not spend that much money. It's gonna benefit him way more than it's gonna benefit us. But like I said, I feel that we need to maintain our section of the fence, but it comes to a point where, if you look at all the properties, a lot of people aren't aware how many properties the conservation department oversees and how many feet of fence line that equates to. I don't have it in my budget to maintain, that much fence. But Dalton and I are trying, we're doing what we can with the resources, and, there's only 2 of us. So, I definitely wanna work with Whitney. I know Rick, Dick Smith, along Faulkner's, we've had issues at Tick Ridge, we've had issues at Mud Creek. We're trying our best, but, you know, that's something, you know, in the future, that might be brought up, you know. We don't have the reserve, I guess, you know, the discussion of how are we gonna pay for these projects. So, you know, we can have more of an in-depth discussion about that, you know, how we're gonna fund this. But, you know, like I said, we wanna work with them, but to a point, you know, what's the benefit for us?
No, I understand, it was a good
So,
discussion, I think
yeah.
everybody's open to compromise, and
Yeah,
that's where.
so I
we
think,
need
you
it.
know, my biggest concern, you know, I spent 10 years, leading the Lake View Watershed Project, and
Yes.
soil erosion, you know, was the key component to that project. So, you know, that's something that I'm looking at, and, you know, he's done a ton of clearing upstream. So, you know, it's just a concern I have, you know, how we can still work together, but not have long-term issues, that we're gonna, you know, continue to put money towards. You know, another point that I brought up last night was maintenance. You know, and that's something I'll probably have a conversation with you, Steve. I feel that, you know, once we do this work, put in a new fence, we need to have some sort of maintenance agreement. That was something that we lacked, the first couple rounds of ponds and fencing that we put in at Geode. Who is responsible, you know, from that day on, who is responsible for maintaining that fence? I feel if a tree comes off county property, Dalton and I are responsible for cutting it, but are we also responsible for fixing that fence? I know how to fix fence and I know how to build it, but is that something, you know, is that my responsibility to do that, I guess? So I think we need to have some sort of, you know, maintenance agreement, you know, outline kinda, you know, the nitty gritty between the lines. Obviously, you know, we don't own that full section. It's like 1,300 feet, on the Mabius, project, but, you know, we own what I would say is the flood gap, which is the steepest part. So, you know, Whitney and I agreed, you know, who owns what section of the fence, you know, based on the right-hand rule, but I just think we need to have it, you know, to cover our basis, both parties, county and Whitney, moving forward. So, but yeah, I foresee it being more of an issue in the future.
Thank you. Renee?
On June 12th, ArcaSearch finished their digitization project, so now it's in the hands of the company, putting it on thumb drives for us and indexing things, so hopefully we'll be hearing back from them and saying that we will get the thumb drives and then they'll be on the website. And you got the quarterly reports?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I also included the fiscal year of 2025 in that, so
Excuse me, Lene, what does conveyance mean?
that is when you're conveying a property.
Okay, from one person to the next, and, okay.
All right. Thank you. Kelly?
Okay, Steve, would you so kind as to hand those to the board, please?
So you've got your monthly reports again. The general ledger showing the fund balances for the month of, ending the month of June. The investment balances, the motor vehicle retention fees for the month of June. Again, showing the old fees, what we would have retained versus what we actually did retain with the new fees. And then I added a spreadsheet, the last one showing a running total of the motor vehicle driver's license and use tax that we retained for fiscal year 24 and for fiscal year 25. So in fiscal year 25, we collected an additional $59,000 due to that House File 674. I expect that to more than double for the fiscal year 26. The last thing in your packet there is an overview and an explanation of the property tax sale that was held on June 16th. It's interesting if you care to study it some. We have mailed out statements to those parties that had their taxes sold. As a reminder, they have outstanding property taxes that are still due. As far as my office, additionally, we have ended the month of June in property taxes, and we're getting to ready to end the fiscal year once we receive confirmation that the secondary roads has ended their year, and then The auditor's office will have to end their year so that we can finish ending our year. Then the fund begins with getting everything ready for the new 2026 fiscal year. And then a short note here, my office will be closed on July 22nd. It's a Tuesday. All my staff and I are to attend a DOT 5th District meeting in Oskaloosa. We will notify KLJ in the newspaper when the time gets closer. Signs will be placed in the office and on the door. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you. Blake?
All right, so district court coming up, we have Judge Joshua Shear, who's gonna be rotating in, not till the end of the month, so about July 28th. Judge Wright will rotate out and Judge Shear will rotate in. Our regular district court dates coming up this month are July 7th, 14th, the 21st, which is what we call a non-reported day, so the state doesn't have a court reporter that will be there. So, most court hearings won't occur. If there's an emergency, we can have something, but typically not a lot of court happens on that day, though. It's the 21st. And then the 28th. Courtrooms are open to the public if anybody wants to come. Any of those dates, those are on Mondays. Our trial date this coming month is July 15th. It's FECR 008547, State v. Pacheco Lopez. That's the court case that's currently set for trial on that date. District Associate Court, we still have Judge Jonathan Stensvog. We have court dates. Those are going to be on Wednesdays, July 9th and 23rd. Those are bi-weekly. We also have arraignments July 2nd and 16th. And once again, those are also open to the public if anybody wants to come. Magistrate courts, daily initial appearances in the mornings if we have arrests from the night before or from the day before, and traffic and simple misdemeanor pretrial conferences can happen daily. Most of them will occur on Fridays. As far as items of interest from our office this last month, we had a seized property action. That's SPLA 012541. In those types of cases, we will petition the courts. It's a civil matter, but we petition the courts to seize either personal property or cash, those types of things. It can also be paraphernalia and other items from court cases. In this case, it was cash that we seized and petitioned the court to forfeit over to our offices in the state. In that case, it was $4,540. The way that works out is the seizing agency, it gets split between the state, the seizing agency, and our office. So we get 10% of that, the state gets 10%, and the seizing agency in this case was the sheriff's office. This was seized by former Deputy Spencer Ryder in a criminal case. That was FECR 007922, State v. Cameron. So our office got the $454. The sheriff's office got the remaining balance after the other 10% was sent to the state. Our district's chief judge is retiring. That was Judge Myron Gukin. He retires July 7th, 2025. Our Iowa Supreme Court Chief Justice Susan Christensen has appointed a new chief judge for our district down here. That's District Court Judge Sean Showers. He's from Washington County, so he's going to be our new chief judge. Chief judge kind of manages and handles the day-to-day operations of our district and the judges around here. So kind of a big deal to have our old chief judge retiring and a new chief judge appointed. There are some new laws that got passed this last year and that come into effect July. I'm just going to point out a couple we think are kind of important. One of the big ones I think you probably all should know about if you're not already is the hands-free phone usage. It's relatively similar to how it was before, but it's more restrictive now. So in this case, it used to be, if you were using like Google Maps or something while you were driving, you were considered okay. That's not the case anymore. It has to be all through voice activated. You can still do it. If you touch your phone while you're driving, you could technically be ticketed. The bill that passed does say that law enforcement should give you warnings through till next year. So you have about a year of leeway before you will get tickets. But they can still pull you over and give you a warning about it. So keep that in mind. Another law that we think is a little bit of import to note is that the minimum age for possessing a firearm has been lowered to 18. So it used to be 21, now it's 18. That does not mean that an 18-year-old can purchase a firearm, so they can't just go to the store and buy one, but they can legally possess one. So, if it's gifted or something along those lines, that could technically be okay. Other than that, that's about it from our office this month. Thank
Like
you.
with the hands-free, how does that apply then to like the GPS units that you see stuck to everybody's windshield, but has the screen out there, you glance at it, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think technically that is considered an electronic device that's not part of your car. So theoretically, if you're sitting there touching it, I think an officer has probable cause to pull you over and potentially ticket for you. I don't know, that might be something that gets, litigated in court. I think this is more targeted to cell phones and that nature. But, you never know what things pop up with when laws get passed like this. So maybe, it's hard to say.
Just one other thing, Blake, so just high level, the trial date on June 15th.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a brief high level overview?
Oh, the case?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, there's a few charges in this one. This is an enticing a minor case, so this was done by the city police department. It was essentially what you would maybe consider like an undercover sting, run by Chief Murray. He posed as a underage girl and communicated with this person online, and this person was charged with enticing a minor in that case. So that's basically what it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Joe? I've got a couple of nuances in the state that I'm dealing with also. Working on this finishing up, changing our multiple, the state is now gonna allow at least 2 dwellings on a parcel. So I'm working on changing the ordinance to accommodate that. Before, you had to have at least 10 acres to have 2 residents, and it could only be for a family member. That was the county ordinance. The state now says you can have, it doesn't have to be any minimum acres, anybody can live in it, and you can have 2 dwellings on a parcel. We're gonna try to write that to minimize the possible, I can see some negative impacts that may have. So we'll try to minimize that, but, we're gonna have to, at a minimum, we're gonna have to follow, the new state code.
Excuse me, Joe, so would that include like if somebody bought a trailer house somewhere and moved it in?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you and I talked about before?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
They could do that. They could add they could add 2 dwellings into their house, or they could add what's called an accessory dwelling, which could be build another house, move in a mobile home.
Okay.
So I'm ironing out a few details, getting some of the language. Some of the definitions they put in have made it a little hard to nuance that, to get a word on it, but I think it'll probably go to planning and zoning in August. They also lowered the standard for variances, under certain circumstances to what's called practical difficulty as opposed to a hardship. Which is something, the practical difficulty standard we've already been using, because we've, a long time ago, determined, at least on my end, that implicitly the code allowed it. Now it explicitly allows it, so there's no question. Before we thought it was implied, so we've used it for probably 10 or 15 years already. Which, it's easier to grant variances to setbacks and so on. The hardship standard is almost impossible to meet, and very few counties, or cities for that matter, really adhere to that hardship, because if they did, you can almost never grant a variance. But we put specific language in as to what circumstance you could take a practical difficulty. And so we're not really gonna change that. I think it's in line with what the state did. So we're kind of on the same page now. Last month, we lost a little over 400 phone lines in the county. That's, usually we lose 30 to 40. Last week we lost 400. We're down to 3,800 landlines in the county. And
does that include businesses?
That includes businesses. And the vast majority of those 3,800 are business telephones.
That's down from 15 years ago, there were over 10,000 phone numbers in the county, landlines, and I said we're down to about 3,800 now. So that's a significant, and that's also dollar-wise, there's a dollar a line collected, so that's $400 less and go to 91 going forward. And last thing I have is, it has a few floodplain issues, so I just wanted to kind of put that word out. If you have a cabin in a floodplain, if it's damaged by more than 50%, or you do work on it that increases the value by more than 50%, the cabin has to come in line with the current floodplain ordinance. Say you've got one that's 2 feet off the ground and you do significant work to it, it's now gonna have to be raised to 1 foot above the flood level per the DNR. So you need to keep that in mind. If you want to do remodeling, it's gonna be significant. It's probably gonna require you to meet that new standard. And campers, especially in the campgrounds along the river, are required to be able to be moved at a moment's notice, which means they have to have wheels. They can't have decks that are attached to them, like you need to be able to pull them out and have them on the highway. They have to be licensed. They can't have, permanent electrical hookups that can't be easily disconnected. I think that's the case in most places, but there are a few issues out there, and we're starting to deal with a few of those. But everybody should keep that in mind, that if there's a flood coming, you're supposed to be pulling out your campers and getting them out of the floodplain. You're not supposed to be leaving them in that flood event. And the skunk generally comes up slow enough that there's usually time, at least how long the skunk to get, get pulled out of that floodplain. That's all I have.
Excuse me, Joe, we talked about this a little bit before, but would you get an opportunity, could you pull all this together of all the properties that the county owns? Like county-owned properties, very specific, and the parcels?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, can you share that with us? I'd like to see that, please.
Do you want, I'm sorry, do you want a list or do you want a map? Or do you want both?
Both. Both would be great, list for sure, but yeah.
Jay?
Yeah, so I'll kind of just go through my generic stuff here. Maintenance updates for last week, and into this week. Worked on a culvert replacement on Graham Avenue east of Fremont. That should be open later today. That was a rather large excavation to get down to the bottom, and we ended up finding a part of an old concrete box culvert attached to the culvert that was causing the issue. So we had to remove all of that, replace that. Pavement markings, we've been working on center line pavement markings, that would be the yellow, and they're gonna continue working on that. And then once we get done with the center line, they'll switch over to white. So we usually get one done and then switch to the other one just from the clean out procedures with our unit that we have. We did do our annual crane and hoist annual inspections this week as well. That's where we have a company come in and review our cranes that we have in the shop and some of our mobile sign truck and different things like that. They also review our chains and slings as part of our safety, just to make sure the equipment that we're utilizing is proper. We have that done outside. We did have a shoulder disc working in various locations, and some of that was on gravel roads, and some was working on paved roads, focusing on that. But the main emphasis this last week was on that culvert replacement to get that done before the weekend, have it opened up. Just some miscellaneous and construction updates here. Tuesday night, I attended the Salem City Council. There we discussed our TSIP project with the new signing that we're going to be putting up around the school on the east end of town, as well as talking about speed limits coming in and out of Salem. So with some of our improvements with road improvements, there was a need to look at how our signs are to bring those into the standard. And we had, I think, a pretty good meeting there, good understanding of what we're proposing to do. And then later, I'm planning on July 24th to bring that up to you guys as a resolution to assign those speed limits. And there really is no major change. Most of it's just updating the distances and continuity as you go through town, so it's clear what on the farm to market routes, what the speed is.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt you, but it's kind of important on how that works. So if a city or an incorporated town is under 500 population, you kind of expanded on that, so everybody understands that. The county has the ability to determine the speed limit.
Yeah, so any farm to market route, that's typically your paved roads that come into a city that's under 500 population, the county has jurisdiction as far as signage goes. If they're gonna want to install a stop sign, that is actually your decision to approve. Any speed limits, anything like that, we are responsible for the road itself. We're not responsible for outside the road, so it's
So we're talking specifically J20 and W55.
W55, yeah, correct. And then any other community in the county that's under 500, then we have that jurisdiction as well. So, and there's a legal opinion that was from the, not a legal opinion, I shouldn't use that word, a letter, so there's a difference. A letter that the counties are utilizing that talks about state code and how that came into place, because there was a lot of questions. I think this was back in the 2000s, maybe 2010 range, that talked about when cities, we were seeing that kind of depopulation of these smaller communities and who's responsible, who's taking care of the roads, and that was a letter that came from the state attorney at that time to give us some clarifications how counties kind of work forward with farm market routes. So
Yeah, so I think from what we talked about, obviously the group was very supportive of what you're doing with the signage for the school and all that, but I think there's probably some conversation that they'd like to have on speed limits, just to make sure everybody's in agreement on that. I don't think the full city council is in agreement at this point, so.
okay,
we probably
something
need
I
to
want to follow up
continue
then. When I left, it seemed like everybody was understanding what I had, so we gave a
I
little
think they
back
understand,
then,
yeah, yeah, I don't think that's a question, I just think there may be some concerns on the west and east side there.
Okay, no problem.
Let me know if I'm wrong.
No, I already talked to him about it.
Okay, so we'll follow up, and maybe that might delay that a little bit just to make sure. Again, there is just more working with the community. The speed limits that we assign are based on some of the traffic studies that we're looking at and engineering judgment when we're establishing those. So it's not that necessarily that there's a lot of negotiation, but it is also communicating before we put everything in place to make
Because
sure.
you guys did one of those studies on the east side, right?
The DOT did one on the on this very south end prior, back in the 90s.
Oh, you just did one on the
We
east side.
did east and west side, we did traffic count and looking at speed as it's coming into town. So,
Yeah,
yep.
so you got good data there.
Yep, yeah, fair data. I think that's, when you get into it, you can always say there's more, less needed, but yeah, correct. KCTC, they've been working on Franklin Avenue, their contractor has, and they have made great progress. They plan to have majority of their work done today. They'll be doing some boxes and some dirt work, and they still have cleanup to do, but as far as what you see for traffic control and different things like that, that should be wrapped up today. There might be a few small things next week, but overall, they've gotten in, they essentially did that in a week and a half, so we're not gonna complain about that. That went good. Maintenance projects, I wanted to give you some future things that are coming up. Salem, one of the reasons I was there is we're looking at doing some work on J20 around the school for some intakes to some existing drainage that we're working on. Then we're gonna also be working on a ADA compliant sidewalk crossing there at the school that we'll be doing in-house. So that will be going on. We anticipate probably 2 weeks of work, and that's on and off, so we're gonna be in and out. It's mainly just, we're planning the end of July, middle of July to the end of July to get that work done. And then the other one is Goodyear Road. This is just here west of town here, goes north of 235th Street. We'll be removing the earth shoulder, so on that section of road, they actually have an earth shoulder, and we have some issues with edges and the grass is getting taller. One of the things we're looking at with the amount of truck traffic we have on that section, we're gonna look at, this is from the railroad bridge south to 235th Street, is to go in there with a milling head and remove the dirt and add 6-inch granular shoulders back in there. So we have met with a couple of the landowners out there. We're gonna do some prep work ahead of time, but we're gonna be bringing a milling operation to come in to mill it for us, and then we're gonna get the rock put in. It might be a couple-day project, but that is something that we're scheduling for around the middle of July, July 15th that week is what we're working with the milling contractor. We're kind of on their schedule of when they show up. And this was a group project. This is gonna be in conjunction with the city, so they share half the cost on that road. So they agreed to work with us on that. And again, that is just to give you some updates here as far as things that will be coming. I'm not gonna be available for the next 2 board meetings. Next week I'll be at a mid-year conference, and then the following week I get to spend time with my kids at the county fair. So I'll be back on the 24th.
Excellent. Thank you.
I just came back from West Des Moines, spent 4 days there for the outdoor school training. My office now is working on the end of the fiscal year. We're getting ready to process getting ready to start the process of property taxes. And all levies are all put in my office. That's all I got.
I have a question, if you don't mind here. Derek was invited to the meeting today, as I understand, on vacation? Okay. I'd like to see him at a future board meeting, or a department or elected official heads, just because he is a department head. And he has a responsibility to all of us to make a report and understand where we're at. We'd like to know where we're at with the
I'll let him
audiovisual
know.
system.
I'll let him know.
All right, that would be good, thank you.
Roger could not be here today, we give a report, but, just give you what benefit Roger actually gives to the county, to our veterans over the past year. He brought in to the veterans $8,206,752. So, you can see, $8.2 million to the county brought in to our veterans. I find that admirable and very well done. On that. Steve, do you have anything?
Yeah, I didn't have any board meetings, but I did attend some meetings this week. So I went to the school board meeting on Monday evening to get an update on what's happening with the school and how they're getting ready for the new year. So that was an interesting conversation, and I'm sure there'll be more to it, but there was a lot of data shared talking about attendance and how they're gonna break down the school year as it moves forward, and some of the renovations that are projected to hopefully take place in their perspective at the Howe Center. And I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but I'm sure if you read the paper or you get on KLJ, you get an update on what's happening there as well. So it's your money, so you should be involved and understand what's happening there. Also went to, as Jake said, the Salem City Council meeting on Tuesday evening. A couple of things that came up there. Jake did a really good job of giving an overview of what he's doing with the school and how he's going to progress with looking at speed limits on all four sides of the town. I think that was extremely informative, and I think for the most part, those folks are extremely appreciative of your efforts there. And communicating was really, really good, so that worked out extremely well. The other thing that came up was a 28E agreement between the city of Salem and the sheriff's office that we probably need to get a little more detail on, and I don't know if you've had a chance, Steve, to look at anything there?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay, vaguely familiar with it because I went to the city council meeting, so we need to follow up with the sheriff on that and how that's all gonna progress. And then last evening, as Caleb said, I went to the conservation board meeting, and it's always good to sit down and see what he's doing and how things are going, and I think things are going well overall. Lots of little things come up, so I think we all need to understand how those impact him and his budget. Next week I have Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Commission and then Russ as well, so I'll be tied up pretty heavily in the next week. That's it for me.
Okay.
The 10th, I have a meeting with Mississippi Valley Workforce Development. They are realizing that with maybe federal cutbacks and federal expenditure watches and everything like that, the state of Iowa is receiving less money from the federal government for programs like that. So they're looking at maybe merging, or looking at the possibilities of merging the Mississippi Valley, which goes from Clinton County clear down the Mississippi, including Henry County inside, interior, and clear down to Lee County as one Mississippi Valley. They're looking at merging with South Central, which is a cluster of counties in the south central part of Iowa, as well as the northeast cluster, to make it all one big happy group family type thing. As a cost saving manner, administrative costs wouldn't be times 3 or times 4. It would be one set of administrators for that program. They've even considered bringing in Cedar Rapids area, which is the metro area. They kind of refer to it as a donut hole, to bring essentially from about Newton east, all being one grouping for workforce development.
East and south.
Yeah. So it's a huge segment. It's the most of the population in the state of Iowa. So it's that they're gonna unpack that a little bit more, at the next meeting and kinda talk about it. Some counties are for it, some are a little apprehensive, what they wanna do, you know, not knowing all the details, so yet to be known.
For the department heads, we are still in the process of doing the compensation study with Paul. If you have any other comments to us, please bring them to us. But, we are gonna set a date to make a decision on that very shortly, so. That's it. Anybody else have anything else to say on this? Any questions? If not, thank you all. Jake, you're up next.
Hi, how are you doing? Are you just gonna do? I'm just doing the motion, the resolution, just you guys have everything. It's just what I talked about already, so it shouldn't take too long. Well, I have to read something, so it might take. Okay, so first up, we have the resolution. Bear with me here. Resolution number 21-2025-20, in support of the joint CHBP grant agreement and a letter of support for the Competitive Highway Bridge Program CHBP grant project. Whereas Henry County Iowa Bridge FHWA number 28640 has been identified as being part of a joint competitive highway bridge program CHBP grant project. And whereas Iowa Bridge FHWA number 28640 have been included in a bundle as detailed in Exhibit B, and whereas we accept the contracting authority for the bundle as detailed in Exhibit B, and acknowledge the roles and responsibilities of each party as detailed in sections 3 and 4, and whereas it is desired by and in the interest of Henry County to participate fully in a CHBP project activities as a subrecipient, to provide all requisite information necessary to bring to completion all project phases through final completion, and whereas we are in support of Iowa DOT providing primary recipient roles and duties, and whereas we understand and accept the subrecipient roles and responsibility as defined in the 28E Cooperative Agreement for a Competitive Highway Bridge Program CHBP grant project, including its reference exhibits, and whereas each county, as shown in Section 4, Paragraph A, shall be responsible for all matching funds and accept any costs exceeding the funds requested in a CHBP grant application for the respective structure, and whereas it is the intent of Henry County upon award of CHBP funds to enter into a federal aid agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation, DOT. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Henry County, Iowa hereby approves and directs the chair to sign this letter of support for the Competitive Highway Bridge Program CHBP grant project and the 28E Cooperative Agreement for a Competitive Highway Bridge Program CHBP grant project, and to provide all pertinent correspondence and project information to. Attention would be Nicole Sten with Iowa DOT.
Motion to approve this resolution.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Yes. Second discussion.
Yes. Yeah. Luckily, they didn't bring hard words for me to say today, so I appreciate that. This is part of that grant application for the bridge on Iowa Avenue here just north of town. So what we're essentially doing here is this is a 2080 agreement with all the other entities that are involved, with the DOT being the lead applicant for this grant. And that is a good thing because they have the support staff to work with it. It's also in the 28E directs HDR to be the consultant that will be writing the grant application. The Iowa DOT has HDR on as don't use the word retainer, but somehow in their system. And we are utilizing them to write this grant. So we will get a bill for our portion of this. And the way that 28E is set up is, I believe there's 19 bridges. And those 19 bridges, the bill will be divided by 19. So some entities have 2 structures, whereas Henry County has 1, so we'll pay our portion. In the past, you're in that around that $20,000 range. I don't know if we really have a good estimate on this, other than this should be less is what my anticipation is to go into it, but this is very similar to what we did with the raise grant. It is, you have a little bit of money up front to get into that application. And we are a really good candidate as far as the state's application.
So it's proportional to project, number of projects, not the
Correct.
valuation of the project.
Yep, correct, yeah, because essentially it doesn't matter if the bridge is a $5 million bridge or a $2 million bridge from the grant writing, they still have to collect all the information and put that together for there's an actual little blurb or specifics to the project that we're looking at for us. There'll be a lot more work for us, we'll be going out to get letters of support, so they'll draft a blanket letter that then we'll reach out to other entities in the community to help us support this letter. So very similar process. I think you two were on there from the Rays side. There's just some legwork on our end that we have to provide it. And what they're saying in this agreement is they're going to do that. We are fully moving forward. We're going to be 100% support of this project.
So the $20,000, is that for the study or the participation in the grant?
That's the grant writing application. That's a fee of having HDR do it. So when I say the 20, that's what it was for the Raise grant. We don't really have a good number on this one, other than it should be less. It should be a little bit more straightforward. The tricky part of this grant is we have to have it in by August 4th. I think it's due August 4th. So that time window to work is really tight. So that's why if I'm on, my little vacation at the fair with my kids, I will be doing work to make sure that we're getting that stuff done. So we definitely have to, not have, but we are going to go 100% after that. Thanks.
So the value of that bridge then, the replacement was?
Right now we're showing around $1.5 million to do that project. So,
and our percent would be?
It's an 80-20.
Okay.
Correct. And the only difference in these grants, when you write them, is that 80-20 is, that's how we figure it, but what we put in. So if the bridge ends up costing more, then it's, our 20% will increase. If it ends up coming in less, then our 20% will actually, the percentage will go up. So we're already kind of locked into that dollar amount that we say in the grant. So, but in this case, what we're looking at for the size and structure, we feel like we should be in pretty good shape.
How many other counties?
It's just 19 structures. I think there's
19
structures. So some counties have 2. It just depends. This is the second time that we've done this, second round of these applications, and we've been successful the first time around too. Again, because of the condition of the state of Iowa's bridges, and nationally, then it does allow us to have a little bit better language to go after these funds.
They're all bridges.
Correct. Bridges is a definition, so some of these structures are box culverts. So for the city, a bridge is defined as anything wider than 20 feet in the stream. So that's why the city of Mount Pleasant structure is included in this grant application. So they'll be doing something very similar like this as well. The city stuff might be a little bit different.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Petrie,
Yes.
Lindy,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
So there's only 2 places, you sign Mark, and then Robin, you'll have to sign. Okay, next up is a motion. For July 3rd, 2025, 22-2025-20, that a contract extension through July 31st, 2026 with Elliott Oil Company for petroleum products be hereby approved pursuant to the special provisions and specifications of item 12.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Yes.
Second. Discussion, this is a continuation of last year's agreement.
Correct,
That was written into the contract, if we could have an extension, all parties agreed to.
Correct. So every 2 years, we go out for bids for our fuel system. In that provision, we have a 1 year, that if both parties agree to extend it, they can. So we're in agreement, and Elliott Oil is in agreement as well.
So is that the same price then on the fuel, or is that down?
The margin stays the same. So it's a margin, not the fuel price. So we pay whatever the rack price is at the DOT, that we get our prices from, whatever that states, then Elliott Oil can add their they add their margin on top of that to provide us fuel.
So this contract was originally with Cobb Oil,
Correct.
and Cobb took over the contract.
Yeah,
Took over the contract.
So last year, when the bids were due, they were in the process of purchasing, and we looked at that, and we've got some documentation that it was very coming to us that Elliott Oil was in the purchase of doing that, and they had honored that contract or were agreeable to the contract. So they worked together before they actually submitted it. They just didn't have the transition done.
Great. Thank you.
All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Passes unanimously.
Just gonna sign that, I'll take it back. Thank you. That's all I have, unless you guys got something else for me.
Oh, we do not today.
Okay, not today. All right.
You said it earlier, but I was slow and didn't catch it. Where were you gonna bring the milling machine in to bring the earth and shoulder down?
So at 235th Street, going north on Goodyear Road up to the bridge. And then we're gonna do some work ahead of time to improve some drainage out of the ready mix or the precast entrance to try to get some of that water not to flow right next to the pavement. So, yeah, just trying to address that. And again, some of that's kind of, we're really looking at that to get the road ready, because we will have a lot of extra traffic when we actually close the bridge up to 35th Street.
Then one other little question. When you do pavement markings, does that automatically, is that sensible from the driving aids that modern vehicles have, the lane swerve and things like that? Does that automatically pick that up? Or is there a spatial?
Loaded question there. So we put glass beads in the paint, and there's different technology that's out there, and I am not an expert on how all that detection's taken care of. But with our lines, it is picking up either the glass beads or the distinction that there is a difference in the pavement. Correct. So that technology is advancing relatively fast. So there's been a lot of presentations on that over the time, but that is part of that technology that lets you know if you're drifting. It's whatever the computer stuff is doing, it's doing something in the background to make that work.
I guess I didn't know if like the engineering office would have to go in and map that on a computer map with a certain width, you know, to have that be in the system, or if there was a sensor.
So my understanding is that my understanding is what we're providing out there, they're using part of that data that the car is collecting on site. So they're not using a map that's coming in to confirm. There are other things that I believe that car is utilizing from data outside that would be based on what we're showing. But for when they're looking at the paint lines, that car's sensors is reading what they see out in the field, is my understanding of that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have fun at your conference, we'll fair.
Yep. And then I'll take that
Yeah,
motion.
we got our side map.
Then I'll get out of here.
All projects done?
That's why that's why you have this long weekend to work on them. So woodworking projects are coming, and cattle are mostly broke to lead. So if you're looking for some entertainment or want to come out and help out, we got a bottle cap that likes to fall over. Just lay there.
Sounds like a painting goat.
It actually, you might nickname him or change his name. So
The goat.
the painting bottle cap. Yes. All right, thanks guys.
All right, thank you. Next on our agenda is the second reading of the standard penalty amendment ordinance. We have it. You lost it there, Steve.
Yeah, Howard. I'll get it. There's some copies sitting around, I think, in the back row. I think they were printed out by copies of the burn ordinance as well as the standard thing. So it's a good take a minute to get back on here. I think it's two. Pull that one.
Two sides.
Is there intention here to have Chad read that, or what are you thinking?
Does anybody want us to read it, whole thing again? I see no. We have copies. Pardon?
As long as I can grab copies.
I think there's some floating around.
Here's some here.
Yeah. I just need one. Yeah, Dad, you need two. Thank you so much.
So you didn't mean to hit you in the head.
All right,
You're good.
Summarization is that we would like to be changing or we would be changing the penalties for civil and penalty infractions that are imposed by the county. So. And everybody has that chance to look it over again. We will have the third reading next week. We will not waive it in case there is concern every time. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the second reading of this amended ordinance. We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
A second, any discussion? And if, at this time of discussion, if people do have comments, I'll entertain them too. Hearing none, all those in favor of the second reading to approve it, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Any subcommittees that have not been reported on by us? Hearing none, public comments. Leland?
Okay, the county weed commissioner, unless you just put it on the website, his contact wasn't on there, but I got a hold of him a couple of weeks ago, and you know, I'm a musk thistle reporter for him, a spotter, volunteer, of course, you understand. And anyhow, so I used to ask him if he got the big pay raise that everybody else got, and he said no, and he didn't want a raise. He said he didn't even turn in all his hours. And so I asked him if he was interested in being next supervisor. And he kind of hem-hawed around, you know, we're going to need a new supervisor, you know, in about 542 days, if my count's correct. So then I asked him about this burn ordinance, and he used the C word. And of course, you know what that is, but I think he might be interested in that P&Z administrator.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
What? Communism.
Okay.
Yeah, it's no secret, you know, I mean, goodness. Anyhow, you know, the guy had worked good with the Henry County Watchman, but, you know, do you really expect these volunteer firefighters, they don't have to do this. You think they're gonna get up from the dinner table or their kid's ball game and go out there and the smoke and the soot and fight this fire, when you guys are sitting in here making all this money, counting the money, finding their friend that had a little boo-boo, and you think their friend is going to make a donation or go to the pancake breakfast and he's going to blame the firefighters for it, for the fine. And these firefighters are proud of their community service. Do you think there's a possibility that you could completely ruin the volunteer firefighter system? And have you thought about community service instead of a fine? You'll bring people together, let them work together. And I can tell you, not a personal experience, but I know somebody that did that. I'm telling you, we need to pay the firefighters for their time. Nobody else wants to work for free. And you call it what you want, pretend all you want, but this fine and this ordinance you got is nothing but communism.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
You're welcome.
Seeing no other comments or any other comments, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. We are now adjourned.